Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lucifer, the latest episode of Supergirl, as well as the latest episode of The Gifted. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about easier to respect shows. For example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Lucifer, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Supergirl, and or skip to this week's episode, what I had to say about this week's episode of The Gifted. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Lucifer. Another great episode. In this particular episode, I really love the fact is we have Lucifer and Ella bonding. It wasn't just an exclusively them episode. There was other, like there's Linda, Dan, and Chloe, but more so than anything, like obviously case-wise, it dealt with them because Lucifer gets a call about Candy, his ex-wife, being missing. And Ella decides to go with him. And then she's like, well, I can't. I got issues going. It's like, oh, well, never mind. You twisted my arm. And she goes with him. And this is a cool episode because we got to learn a lot more about Ella, something I went into this season wanting more of. Because I felt like there's a lot to Ella's story that we haven't even tackled. I mean, for one, her counting cards. I really loved that. Because I knew she had some bad blood with, Las Vegas in some shape or form, the way she was acting and everything, and just how like knowledgeable. It's like poker. No, wouldn't you be hitting blackjack? It's like, okay, gambling's your thing, isn't it? And it turns out to be that case. I mean, in particular, it's counting cards. I also thought it was kind of interesting the wife or ex-wife, Roxy to that loan shark Louise is played by Lauren Holly. I thought that was kind of cool. I was like, nevertheless, she was like, God, it's been such a long time. I know her best from like NCIS. I forgot Shepard. Yeah, Director Shepard from NCIS. That's what I best know her from. But she's been in like many different things. But that's the thing I know her best from. Nevertheless, it was actually kind of an interesting thing about why she counts cards. Because in this season I was like, cause we know that her family isn't necessarily all on the up and up. Because it does seem like last season we found out her brother is kind of on like the criminal side of things, so I thought that maybe that's something we'd explore this season, but it's like, maybe there's still a possibility of that, but for this episode, Lucifer kind of learned like, oh, like the reason why she counts cards, she's like, it's to keep voices away in her head, and he's like, wait, what? And she doesn't really answer. It's like, okay, so is it like, I mean, there's multiple ways to interpret that, like, either she has like an issue, like a mental issue that like, by being like as perky as she is, it's covering up like what she's really doing, like her inner demons. So her faith, her like peppy attitude, and her being really good and sly at what she does, like counting cards and stuff like that, is her way of compensating for either that, or maybe it's voices in her head, like maybe stuff from her past, like maybe stuff with her parents. We haven't really brought up too much about her family life, aside from her brother that we got introduced last season. So I don't know. There's like I said, there's so much to Ella's story that I'm really fascinated to kind of really break down and get to learn. I mean, we actually break it down. You don't actually know that about much about anyone outside of like Lucifer's the one you really get to learn the most about, but you're learning new things about everyone else, like every once in a while. Like, I mean, for example, like Ella breaking into Luis's place in this episode, that was kind of interesting. But what I thought was what I also appreciate what they did about this episode too was that they cut back and forth between Lucifer now, in the present with Ella and this whole situation in Las Vegas, and obviously him in the past, like basically when he ran away like halfway through season 2, dealing with the whole like aspect of like he helped save Chloe's life, but it also put in perspective like Chloe was kind of forced. It's like, because to him, it's like, no, Chloe doesn't really have feelings for me. It's just part of my dad's manipulation. So it's like, yes, I love her. Like, I have strong feelings for her, and she has some for me. But like, I'd like it if they were her own. His mom revealing the whole like, oh, Chloe was put in his path by her dad. So, especially because they were at such a good place at that point in time before he learned that. Sadly. And this was him obviously during that time dealing with it, which I like how him and Candy actually met. She actually tried to steal from him, and then later on she's like, oh, trying to put on a stop sign. He's like, look at you, bravo, you're good. And then she's like, all right, okay, like the story's true. Obviously I was playing it up, but obviously the story's true. Like the Fletcher being like a club, it belonged to her dad. Long Shark kind of has it now. She has to owes him all this money in all of that too. So what I thought was kind of interesting immediately was like, that this case dealt specifically with the fact that Candy's not dead. In fact, I was about to say that would kind of suck if that was the case, but it's like, no, it's not Candy. She's trying to get the, well, not only was a person in an apartment, someone that she cared about, it was a friend of hers named Allie that died, but they also took the deed to her club. So it's all about figuring that out. I thought it was kind of interesting that the person in particular was a guy at the bar. He didn't seem like he was anybody important, but then we had that situation of like, I guess that's kind of what his purpose was. He was helping out Candy anytime they were at, like, anyone that was at the bar, like, oh, you're there filling them up with drinks so she could easily, like, just pickpocket them or whatever. I guess that was kind of their thing. Because apparently it's like he's kind of a family friend because it's like, my dad treated you like a son. You were kind of like a brother to me. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Because he just seemed like a nobody bartender. But I was like, oh, that's why he has a stake in all of this, because it's like he tried to get it from her dad, but he couldn't. So that's what this was all about for him. Just like, he's got gambling debts of his own, which kind of coincides a little bit with Ella. Not necessarily that she has debts, it's just that she's counting cards and just killing it, dude. It's like, man, you're so good. And then it's like her even getting all dolled up and everything. She's like, yeah, working in a lab all day, don't really get to like dress up a lot. And it's like, oh, you did that specifically because you were trying to try to disguise yourself. I thought that was kind of interesting. So I do love that dynamic. It also brought up some interesting things too, because, she admits, she's like, okay, you're like trying to run away from this whole Chloe thing, but he's like, I'm not. And she's like, yes, you are, like, admit it. And he ends up revealing to her, like, obviously how the whole thing between him and Candy happened. They broke down, like, he broke down and kind of told her about the whole situation. Obviously, much like everyone else, doesn't really understand the whole, like, wait, what does this have to do with your dad's situation? He put her in your path. I don't really know what that means. But it's like, ultimately, Lucifer brings up that the fact, and even Ella's like, wait, so you faked your marriage to kind of skew things away from you and Chloe? And he's like, yeah. She's like, yeah, and you call me an enigma, which is like, yeah, you still are one, but he is one too. Because only a few people know his real situation. I don't even think Mazikeen knows like what's going down with that whole situation. I don't think she does. Like, the only ones that know the truth are Amenadiel, and I think maybe Linda does, but definitely only Amenadiel knows. I'm pretty sure Linda does too. She's usually one of the first ones to kind of figure out why Lucifer does the things that he does. But, it is a situation where I think Ella kind of looks at it a little differently. Like, she knew from the very beginning, it's like, I know you have feelings for Chloe. I know Chloe has a feeling for you. She's just got a sense for all those things. Also, side note, I love the fact is that she hired that stripper, because at first Dan's like, of course you're going to one-up him. He's like, well, I mean, I'd like to take credit for this, Dan, but it wasn't me. And Ella's just coming out, throwing out money. Yeah. And it's just like, wow. Like I said, it's so interesting because it's like you see that there is a little bit of a darker side that Ella has issues, but it's like she puts on that bubbly personality and smiles. And it's just like she's very deceptive in that sense of like, the whole episode's about like bluffing and lying, and it's just kind of, I feel like Ella bluffs a lot more than she's willing to admit. Or, maybe, that's her way of just compensating. Maybe it's not necessarily bluffing, but it's just like hey, I'm gonna appreciate what I got and try to be happy. Like I said, depending on that whole voice thing in her head situation, I'm very fascinated to find out what that is about. Is it like a medical thing, or is it like a literal thing of just like being haunted by her past or her family, whatever the case may be, But what I also appreciate about this episode was the flip side of it, because even Chloe was like, yo, Lucifer, it's my birthday. Wait, you're going somewhere? You're not telling me? And she's so hurt by it. Her and Linda start drinking a lot. They start partying at Lucifer's place. And just for her, she's trying to pretend like it's all okay, but Linda can see through it. It's like, I know you're hurting, because it's like, oh, he's in Vegas again. You heard someone on the phone, him being like, oh, being with someone that's ravishing is the word he used. And then, Linda trying to cover up and everything, but it's like I get it, like, but you're still in the process of healing, because obviously Vegas is kind of triggering some things, because you had just almost died. You were happy for things to kind of pick up with Lucifer, and he just vanished on you. So for her, it was almost like a repeat of that, and she was scared. But she was like, I'm not jealous. I'm not, it's whatever. It's like, I don't know. She was upset with herself, because it's like, why am I feeling like this? And it's just ultimately because it's like, she tries to pretend like it isn't there, but obviously, like, she does admit, like, I do care for Lucifer. It's like, he's my friend, and I wanted to spend my birthday with him and everything, and he left. Because for her, she went through it once before, she didn't want to go through it again. So, which also brought something interesting to my thoughts, that, like, I was like, oh, like, because the way they were acting, it's like, okay, so there's nothing there. It's like, oh, I guess you both moved back. It's like, no. Like, I figured Lucifer still has some residual feelings that he was just keeping that babe. I was thinking, oh, maybe Chloe and Price Pierce. I don't know. I said Price. Pierce. But then it's like, no, like it's still there for Chloe too. She's just trying to like, she's in the stage of trying to figure things out because she's just at a loss because it's like Lucifer doesn't open up to her. Like she still doesn't know a lot about him. It's like he knows stuff about her because stuff about her's popped up in the show. Her mom's situation, her situation with her dad. He knows so much about her. She doesn't know anything about him. Circling back to the whole Ella being like, oh, he's an enigma situation. So. Even had Candy kind of kicking his ass a little bit, being like, yo, get back to your girl, you know? Which, you see that look on her face, which makes me wonder, is there a part of her that might actually kind of like Lucifer now, but does know that his heart belongs to someone else? I don't know, it was just kind of interesting to me. It's like, when it was all said and done. But, even at one point trying to break into the safe that they ended up finding in his room, because for her, I think, it was just anything. Like, maybe it give her some insight into Lucifer. Maybe let her know, like, you know, trying to be like, oh, maybe he's in danger or something. You know, she's just worrying or stressing, and Linda just being an awesome friend is there to help. Because the fact of the matter is, Linda didn't know the entire situation, because Lucifer, the only person he told about the entire situation is Ella. So I doubt she's going to tell anything either, because I know probably for her, and the same thing applies for her and Linda, and that's the whole aspect of, like, if there's anything that's going to be said, it has to be by Lucifer. Like, you know, Linda knows, she's in the know. She knows all there is to know about Lucifer. It's not like she could really explain that to Chloe anyway, but even if she could, it's not her truth to tell. It's Lucifer. Like, that's the only way that's going to, like, it's going to mean so much more coming from him, and it has to come from Lucifer because that shows that he has the courage to do it, which he's done it, but in his current state, he can't really reveal himself to her as, like, the devil and stuff like that, make her understand everything, so that kind of put a stamp in this whole situation. But I also appreciate the fact is that Dan showed up, got a drill and everything. It's like, oh, the wall mess, don't worry, I'm gonna fix this right up. And they're just partying and having fun. You see him and Linda kind of passed out when Lucifer gets there at the end of the episode. Because I'm sure Dan's like, oh yeah, you asked me to do something, Chloe, of course I'm gonna do it. But also this means we get a little dirt on Lucifer. Of course Dan's gonna be all for it too. So I was actually expecting a mini deal to pop up during the episode to help them out or something. Like, that's who I thought was going to end up showing up. I wasn't expecting Dan, but I did like that little surprise, so. But when it was all said and done, Lucifer did come back, and he thought Chloe was asleep, and it was kind of interesting how, like, he ended up opening up to her. That was something she was afraid of, because it's like, yeah, Lucifer might have a good reason why he went to Vegas, but he would never tell me because he doesn't tell her everything, and and not even just everything, just he doesn't really open up to her. But ultimately, he ended up telling her, he's like, I'm sorry, like, I had a good reason to go into Vegas, but the fact of the matter is, like, the reason I didn't tell you is because I knew how much pain it would cause you. It's basically like, we went through this before, and I knew Vegas, like me going off to Vegas, was going to hurt you. So that's why he didn't really want to say anything. Because at the end of the day, all he wants to do is he cares for Chloe deeply, but he doesn't want to hurt her because once again, in his head, he can't fathom the fact is that Chloe's feelings are just genuine, that they're her own. He just feels like, no, it's all part of Dad's manipulation. And if there's anything to ever happen between me and Chloe, I want it because, like, she has feelings for me. She accepts me and cares for me for being me, not just because my dad manipulated her and created this whole situation for her to be that way, which, once again, still don't feel like that's the way. Like, everything that Chloe feels and does, that's her own situation, that's her herself. But we, like I said, we still don't have 100% of an idea, like, how much involvement God had in this. I mean, obviously the whole mini deal kind of making her happen, her being kind of a miracle child and everything between her parents, but still, like, for what purpose? You get the feeling it's connected to Lucifer, but still don't 100% know, so especially if she was meant to be in his path, in what shape or form. Like I said, we had to still hope that's a mystery we're going to get solved this season. But I don't know, it's just kind of a beautiful sentiment, and I was glad that she was kind of waking up, or at least was awakening up to hear that conversation. So it eases things in a good direction of, like, okay, things are good, because she's like, okay, I might have been asleep, but the fact of the matter is he does want to open up to me. He wants to tell me that ultimately he is trying to protect my feelings and everything, so he does care about me. So, because that's her biggest issue. She just doesn't know where Lucifer stands in this whole situation. It's like the moment they were getting close, he ran away, and now it's just like things are weird and awkward, They have been for a while, so I think it's a good step in the right direction. So, and also appreciate the present he ended up giving her. It's like, oh yeah. She's like, what is it? I was like, oh, it's like a necklace from your dad or something, right? It has some significance. It's like, oh no, it's actually the bullet that she shot him with in, like, the first episode. It's like the first or second episode. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like that's that whole sentimental value. I'm like, that's definitely something special. So like I said, it ends off on something good like that. So, I mean, overall, just a great episode. Like like I said, I love just how it is like a fun, just all around episode. But obviously, like Lucifer normally does, I mean, well, not just the character Lucifer, but specifically the show, it does that amazing job of bringing that humor and fun, but also bringing it back to like how it handles its characters, which is, I think, is one of the things that this show does fantastically. That a lot of characters in the show are a lot deeper than you might give them credit for. Even someone like Lucifer, you think he's all jokes, and like even there's a lot of times he won't realize that he's doing something to like, you know, like the whole like, because of him, he was like, this entire episode, he's like, I've been bluffing, but he's like, no, the fact of the matter is I've been outright lying to you. And that's something that I've always promised myself I would never do. Like, he hates lies. He'd never tell a lie, especially to someone like Chloe, because, you know, an aspect of their relationship has always been that he's honest to her. And that's something like that also played a part in last season, because it was like that whole like, you know, like, oh, like, do you trust Lucifer? And she's like, yeah, I do. Like, the fact is Lucifer would never lie. It was that whole situation with her dad. Also, it's kind of interesting because if you remember how that situation ended, it ended with like, I forgot who else was involved. Mazikeen, right. Mazikeen was involved with the whole like Dan setting up her dad's killer, that warden or whatever ended up getting killed. Like Dan set that up. I was like, right. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So I'm still curious, will that kind of come back in any shape or form, kind of come back to bite Dan? We'll just kind of have to wait and see. Especially because there's a whole Pierce situation and he looks at Dan as like a crooked cop and stuff like that. So we still don't know if Dan's new position is set in and stuff like that yet, or maybe it's just given enough time and it will, but nevertheless. Like I said, a great episode. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Supergirl, another great episode. I really love what they did in this episode concerning the whole Lena storyline. The fact of the matter is, I mean, for one, that piece of crap, Morgan, twisting everything to make it seem like it's Lena's fault. It's like, oh, everyone's suffering from lead poison, especially kids. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, this is after Lena did what she did before with the whole trying to save the world from the Daxamites. It's like, it's so sad because it's like Lena did a good thing. She was stopping an alien invasion, but ultimately it's like, well, the fact of the matter is it doesn't matter because like so many people are getting sick. Like, you know, these are parents who are mad because it's like their kids are in danger, and like, you know, it's just like that parental side is like, it doesn't matter what the purpose was, this is still my kid. Because there's even something Lena brought up, it's like to like Samantha being like, would you still be my friend Sam if it was actually Ruby that was sick? And Sam didn't really give an answer because it's like, it's hard to say once that parental side of you kick in. I mean, plus it turns not just the parents against her, but even everyone in National City, because it's like, oh my God, Lena did this and that, but it's like, she saved you guys. Like, she was a crucial to stopping an alien invasion. And then what I love about it too is something that Lena brought up, and I thought was so beautiful in the sense of like, she's had to deal with like persecution her entire life. First for just being rich, some people just probably assume the worst, and they're like, oh, she's just one of those from a rich family, she looks down on poor people like us, or something of that sort. Then she had to deal with the fact of being Lex's sister. Not an easy thing to come by. I mean, I thought it was even interesting, she even made the comparisons between like the Luthor name and Bin Laden. She's like, you might as well treat my last name as being Bin Laden. I'm like, that's kind of, because especially because we've heard tiny bits about what Lex has done in the past, and just when you look at Lex in general, all the like supervillain-esque stuff that he's done. Because I think I could have sworn like even last season they mentioned like an earthquake that like Lex had caused. He's a genius level scary psychopath essentially in most people's eyes, and that Lena has to suffer from that. That was a big part of last season. Lena trying to separate herself, prove that no, not the same Luthors. That's why the whole like it's no longer Lex Corp, it just turned it to L Corp, because it wants to move it beyond just, you know, because of bad publicity of like, oh, the company is connected to Lex. It's still connected with the Luthors, but Lena kind of changed its image, especially saving the day and everything. And that's what made her feel so bad, because all the time and effort she put into that, all that she did trying to protect the planet, she ended up, it's like she did something good, and now that good thing has been besmirched, and now it's like she's back to it all over again. Like all the trouble she went through trying to prove herself to people, and now like one instant it all fell apart. It's like no one commented on the fact of the matter is what Lena did save the world, but it's like not like it's an easy situation. Once again, like when you're in a parent's position and when you hear the fact is, oh, there are kids, you know, sick, of course, like that's going to circulate fast, and like there's going to be a negative light to it because it's like, but you know, Wynn and Lena had tested it before. Sadly, I guess it's one of those circumstances because it was such a last minute thing. Because even Jimmy comments on it, like that wasn't initially what the device was meant for. I actually forgot what it actually was meant for. It was definitely meant to be a weapon against Clark. I think the point, I think I remember now, it was actually meant to disperse kryptonite in the air, I think, to make it so that Kryptonians, Supergirl and Superman in particular, well, at the time it was more so Superman because Supergirl wasn't, you know, an established thing yet. You know, Kara hadn't come out of Supergirl yet. So I think it was meant to like spread kryptonite into the air to make it so it was, the world was inhabitable for Superman or any Kryptonian. I think that was the original purpose. If it wasn't, that definitely seems like it was. That's why that seems so plausible, because that seems like it fit. But nevertheless, I guess because it is such a like machine, because like before it's like, nah, it had like a 0.1% chance of it being anything else. But now like when they tested it again, it was like 10% plus. So it's like, it's just because of the nature of the machine, you know, I'm sure you get a different result every time. Because that was even something, because you know, ultimately Lillian wouldn't have gone through with that if she knew there was going to be a negative connotation to it. It's like, sure, you know, it meant getting rid of the Daxamites, but she wouldn't have given anything to Lena. She wouldn't have been behind Lena using something like that, because the whole point is to have humanity come together against aliens, and the last thing she would want are people against Lena. But to be fair, it's not like she hasn't manipulated Lena in the past to kind of incriminate her, to that whole like framing Lena to be behind her busting out of jail car. And that's just, and that shows you a good friend, which I even love the fact is they dive into it this episode of Lena having two sisters, Sam and Kara, because usually it's Kara that fights tooth and nail for Lena. This time it was actually two people, which is kind of interesting, which is kind of like, it's nice to see more than one person in Lena's corner. Like I say, it's kind of like her and Jimmy have their issues of just how things kind of should be ran and everything. What I thought was really interesting, because it was near the end of the episode, she's like, oh yeah, people who catch a bullet for me. And she's like, you know, they get to call me Lena. He's like, well, you just call me James or Jimmy. She's like, well, Jimmy Olsen. I'm like, is this going to be a thing? That's going to be weird on so many levels. Because think about it. That's Kara's, like, best friend with her ex-boyfriend. Granted, we haven't really, you know, I mean, it's good and everything. She had Monel, so, but still, that's still a little thing you have to think about in the back of your mind. Plus, the fact of the matter is that's Lena Luthor, Lex's sister, which means the sister of Jimmy's best, like Jimmy would be dating the sister of his best friend's mortal enemy, you know. And it's like, it's something you think about that, breaking it down like that, it's so weird, you know, because Clark is like his best friend. It's like, I'm dating like the guy that's tried to kill Clark so many times. I'm dating his sister. So it's just something, I don't know, just that little exchange at the end of the episode, like I said, because especially because they butted heads so much, and that would even make it even more interesting if there was something there. I think that'd really be neat if that was the case. Like I said, I think that might be what they're kind of sparking there. So, but that was kind of a sad thing, like seeing Lena so down in this episode, because even Kara's like, you've always been such a strong person, no matter what, nothing's ever kept you down. But to see her just like drinking herself like that, just like I say, because it's so sad. She worked so hard to give herself a good reputation, and then it just all came down to nothing to most people's eyes. I thought it was so badass when it was all said and done, like Kara grabbed both, like was holding up the plane, and then it split and grabbed both halves of it, was holding it up. Lena was just like, let it go, you know, you stop the chemicals, don't worry about me. But Kara's like, no, like obviously like on it, like saying it without saying it, but it's like, hey, you're my best friend, I'm not about to let you die, so jump, and saved her too. So, but it was still pretty impressive seeing her holding both halves of the plane. Just shows you how much of a piece of crap Morgan is. I knew he was a douchebag, but man, oh man, does he like go above and beyond to just, they went like, yeah, oh yeah, you thought this was just some Joe Schmo, like some douchebag. It's like, no, we're showing you right now, he's supervillain status. It's like, holy crap. Like, I mean, he's kind of on par with Lillian on being a piece of crap. I mean, not only are you poisoning kids just to stick it to Lena, you know, it's just like, holy crap, just to just like pull her down for taking a business away from you. It's like, you are that vindictive and cutthroat. You are a monster. And then for him to like egg Kara onto his like, oh, like, yeah, I mean, like, if anything, you know, I'd be like, if I were, you know, in a situation like this, have you ever been hated someone so much that you would do anything? It's like, you would have to kill me right now, because basically saying I'd be a problem much later on. And it's like, oh, but you're wearing a cape. You wouldn't do it. And it's like, you piece of crap. Which immediately my brain goes, is that going to foreshadow the fact of him getting killed by somebody else? Because obviously this episode dives into Sam and everything, which we still don't know where Sam's situation stands. We're learning a little bit more in this episode, but immediately my brain goes, I think Sam's going to be the one that ends up killing him. Like, she goes rogue or something, and she ends up being the one that kill him. Maybe Kara ends up suffering the ramifications for that because people think she did it, but I don't know. It'd just be kind of interesting. I get the feeling like he is going to die, like, near the end of the season or by the end. Maybe he just ends up getting locked up. Maybe he'll get a cell right beside Lex. I mean, he even killed one of the guy he was working with this episode, just to frame it all on him. It's like, oh my God, he's such a ex-military guy. Oh, just all that for vendetta against Lena, even though it's like, and the fact of the matter is he can do it so cold-heartedly and just so candidly and just smile and laugh about everything he's done. I was like, why are you such a monster? Like, from the very beginning, I already seemed like he had a problem with Lena, but the moment Lena bought Catco from under him like that, it was just like, oh, no holds bar of like, oh, I got to take you down now. So I'm very interested to see what they do with Morgan this season, because it's like, after he premiered in the premiere, we haven't seen him subsequently since. Like I said, they brought him back to be like, yep, he's not one to be trifled with. So, but about the whole Sam situation, I thought was kind of interesting. Like, all those kids got sick because of like swimming in the water that was mixed with all those chemicals and stuff like that, made to mimic lead poisoning. What I'm interested in, the fact is, and it's something I kept thinking the entire time, I was like, Ruby's one of the people that went to the pool a lot, because even Sam brought it up, but it's like, she never got sick. So I don't know whether that's something concerning, Sam, that the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh yeah, that whatever her situation is, it passed on to Ruby, or was it just because Ruby wasn't in the water long enough for her to get exposed to it? Because, like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like all the other kids, like, maybe she doesn't get to go that often because her mom's so busy lately. So maybe that plays it. Well, because the fact of the matter is, subsequently, since the water changed, it's not like Ruby's probably been in that pool, but it's just like in the past, she's always been there. So it's like, that's another contributing factor. So once, because I'm always still debating like the whole situation around Ruby, whether she's adopted or not. Which, speaking of adopted, we did have Kara and Sam. Like, that was a cool thing that came about this episode too. We saw them bonding. It's like, wait, you're adopted? I'm adopted too. What? No way. You also got to see like a different side of like Sam too, seeing her so resourceful, getting like the information she needed on a computer. even like Kara's like, whoa, wow, you did that. That was like, no wonder Lena counts on you so much. Like I said, it was just interesting seeing them bonding. Both kind of alluded, they're like, yeah, I've been having nightmares. Like, oh yeah, me too. And it's like, oh dude, we know it's like there's so many connections there, and it's just getting closer and closer, especially because you're going to be spending so much time around each other. But it's something that Sam ends up discovering about herself this episode, is like the fact is that the bullet didn't pierce her skin. Like, it just ripped into her jacket and her shirt, but it didn't leave a wound. But that's the thing. Whatever her case may be, it's not a pure and out about Kryptonian, which subsequently I do know that Doomsday isn't the same. Like, I know Doomsday was like a creation, like of like like survival of the fittest type of thing, like put him in the worst environment so that Doomsday could always adapt and come back stronger and stronger each time. So it doesn't fall into the same category or work the same way as a Kryptonian does, I think. Like, I think Doomsday's power is just Doomsday. It doesn't apply to like, oh, like the fact of the matter is that get stronger by the sun. Because that's what I was thinking, because it's like, because if that was the case, like, Kara stays superly strong like the entire time, even the sun's not out. But Sam showed that even like at one point she couldn't use her power. Like, she tried to bend. Well, I forgot what it was, but she tried to bend something, but she couldn't. She's like, oh, I'm being stupid. But it's like, so whatever it is, it doesn't kick in all the time. It kicks in probably like in situations where her adrenaline's running high is when her power kicks in. So it is something outside of just like the Kryptonian realm. So it's not like, oh, she's just another Kryptonian. It's like something else entirely. So, like I said, it's still on the, because once again, it could still fit the whole Doomsday thing. So like I said, that's immediately where my brain goes. I'm sure there's going to be something else that's like, oh yeah, there's other things that were released from Krypton. It's actually going to be interesting, considering like next year there is that Krypton show, which I'd be kind of like, I'm really interested to check it out, because I don't know that much about Krypton. Because most things I watch typically don't talk about Krypton. Once again, it was something I brought up last episode about the whole like Kryptonian religion and about Rao and everything. That's an aspect I've never really known about it, because even Smallville, like Clark never really knew too much about his Kryptonian heritage. Most of it took place of like, oh yeah, this is what's happening on Earth. So that was just kind of a thing that I thought was kind of pretty neat too. So I don't know. I'm very interested to see where that whole Sam storyline goes, as well as this whole situation with Lena and Kara and Sam, because it's also an interesting thing too. It's something I talked about earlier was Lillian, but the fact of the matter is, like, you didn't see nothing come up about her. I mean, it's like, she played a contributing factor in all of that, but I am curious to see where Lena stands next time. It does seem like everything's worked out. All the kids have been taken care of and everything. I'd like to see people kind of come up and apologize. Of course, we never get to see that side of the episode, but I'm sure Lena just being heard be like, no, it's okay. I understand. Your child was in danger. You thought it was me. I couldn't blame you, especially because she had to stand there and take her healthy dose of humble pie, and just had to stand there while that guy was screaming at her like, oh, she'll get what she deserves. So that was kind of a shame, and almost had people kill her. It's like I guarantee, I want to see their faces to be like, oh wait, she had nothing to do with that. Oh, I tried to kill someone for no reason. Oh, not only did she not poison my kid, she also saved the world too. So, it sucks that it worked out like that. And it's just like, that piece of crap Morgan Edge gets to walk away from that. Okay. That just sucks so much. But also another aspect of this episode was about the whole Maggie and Alex thing. Was not expecting them to break up this episode. I was thinking like, no. What's going to happen is obviously like, I thought Alex was going to like stretch it out a little bit more, but it's like, no, she dealt with it this episode. Her and Maggie have been going back and forth for the past couple of days, and it's like Maggie's not going to change her position, and Alex is like, I'm not going to change mine either. I want kids. Which for Maggie, it's like, well, these are kids that you could put. These are just theoretical kids, basically at this point. It's a notion. You don't know for sure, but it's like Alex is like, no, I know I want kids. It's not just some thought about like, oh, like it's something that possibly could happen. It's like, I want it to happen, So it makes a very big difference. And like I said, sadly, it's going to end with them breaking up, and seems like that is the case. I was hoping maybe at some point Maggie would like change her mind, but it's like, no, she's set in her mind. And Alex isn't going to change her, just like Maggie can't change Alex about where they stand in the whole situation. So I thought it was kind of interesting, them kind of drinking a little bit, like playing music. I would assume that was breakup sex, but which I hear nothing but apparently good things about having breakup sex. It's like, oh, it's kind of, nevertheless, but kind of spending that one last, like, not just them, but even talking and cuddling, being in the same place for one last time and thanking each other, because it's like, if it wasn't for Maggie, Alex wouldn't have discovered this about herself. She wouldn't realize like she's been hiding who she's really been this entire time. She was able to come out to her family and be surrounded by people who love her, who like will love her despite her sexual orientation, And for Maggie, it's like Alex helped her deal with a lot of stuff that she wasn't willing to face, especially like stuff with her parents. In particular, her dad, she had to deal with that like the episode before last, So they are officially broken up and going their separate ways. Doesn't mean that they won't still cross paths going forward about like, oh, like working together, because like they are going to cross paths in the future, which I'm curious about that. That's definitely going, it's like, it's not going to be easy kind of working with your ex. I mean, I don't know, maybe this will be the last time we see Maggie, but I don't think so, considering like her being with the police and everything. I don't think that's likely, and it's just going to be awkward between her and Alex. I'm sure it's like, okay, let's keep it professional, and then Alex might want to cross some boundaries because of the DEO, but then it's like Maggie's like, no, oh, maybe I used to let it slide. I used to let this and that slide, but it's like, now we're not together. I have to uphold the law and everything. So there might be complications in that realm. Possibility they could go down. So like I said, I'm very interested to see what they do in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of The Gifted. Another great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. We kind of see the family split up a little bit more this episode. Obviously, Lauren and Caitlin stay with the underground. And then you have Andy, Marcos, and Reed kind of dealing with the whole federal building to get the information they can about this whole situation, which even in this episode we still don't know what it was exactly. I guess they got to take time to kind of decipher, go through all the information. But it's kind of an interesting thing, kind of similar on both fronts. Because obviously Caitlyn's worried because it's like you have Lorna kind of raising all these kids to be like, hey, you need to learn how to fight. If you don't learn how to fight, you're not going to survive out there. They're basically as mutants. They're caught up in this war. Obviously Caitlyn has her like, oh no, they're kids. They shouldn't be trained for this. But at the same time, it's also Lauren's getting trained too. It's like, I don't want my daughter a part of this because it's like, I want her to have some kind of aspect of normalcy. But for, Lorna kind of puts it to her. It's like, this is her new normal. Like, she's a mutant. She will always have to deal with this after, like, her entire life. Because for Caitlyn, it's like, well, I want them to have something after, it's all said and done. When this whole thing ends, when peace comes, I want them to have something they could go to after it's all said and done. But it's like, this is a forever battle. Like, that's a nice dream and everything. It's a nice sentiment. But at the end of the day, this is their fight that they have to deal with now and ultimately, once again, for the rest of their lives. So it's just kind of interesting to see that point. And you also see Caitlyn being very overprotective and Lauren being like, okay, she's telling Lauren like, hey, I don't want you training here, and says I'm mom, and pulling her away while everyone else is training. But it's just because, obviously Caitlyn cares and loves her. But ultimately, I think even by the end of the episode, she realizes like, okay, I got to put a little more trust in you, realize that this is your fight, that, listening to what Lorna said, that this is something that she's going to have to deal with, whether Caitlyn really wants her to or not. And it kind of coincides, interestingly enough, with Andy and Reed, because it was kind of an interesting thing too, like almost so many different things. For one, Marcos using his ability to absorb light like that, I thought that was kind of cool. And not only was it because he's able to absorb so much light, he was able to just basically make it look like it was darkness in the back of that truck. But it, like, using his powers, it kind of hurt him to an extent. Like, he strained himself to do it. And Reed brought up the question, like, it's the same thing for you? And it's like, no. To him, he made it compare it like to yelling, like almost like it's something like you put enough force into it, it doesn't hurt you. It's almost like a relief, actually. For him, it's like he feels good using his power when he rips things apart, which is like, you see a little concern in Reed's face when he says that. It's like, yeah. I mean, obviously Reed's concerned because it's like you're powerful, but ultimately you could hurt somebody. And it's almost like for Andy, it's like, well, why can't you just be proud of me, Dad? This is something I'm good at. And ultimately, I think that's what that stems from. Like, Andy's just trying to prove himself, because it's something that him and his dad talk about this episode, about the whole him being bullied thing. I mean, granted, we only saw the beginnings of it in each show. We don't know how long that's been going on. Like, maybe this entire life he's been pushed around and beat down by people, and just like now he has the power to fight back. As someone who was always bullied, he now has the power to fight back, to prove himself that, like, he probably has very low self-confidence. It's kind of an interesting thing I've never commented on before, but I think I click a lot more with Andy because he's kind of a smart ass. Lauren is kind of too, but just like he always like has something like sarcastic to say. I'm kind of the same way. But I think he doesn't have a lot of confidence, and now that he has powers, and his aspect of like, now you have powers, you feel powerful, you want to use them, especially because in this case it's like other people are fighting, I want to fight too, I want to prove useful. And it's something I kind of brought up before. It's kind of an interesting dynamic between the two siblings, because Lauren kind of wants normal to a certain extent. I think she is embracing her powers more and more, mainly because she always had to hide them. She always had to pretend like she was normal, but I mean, it's not necessarily normal having to hide who you are. I mean, arguably, you could say that's probably the most normal thing there is, like hiding who you really are from not just your parents, but everyone around you. It's because everyone would have looked at her so differently, if they had found out she was a mutant. And so it's just, but you see Andy I feel like Andy embraced it a lot more than Lauren openly did, at least to me. But like I said, it's just kind of an interesting aspect of, maybe Andy now feels powerful. He feels like he can show anyone up, he just, and at the same time too, he just wants to prove that he's useful. That's like, I got this, I'm good at this one thing, let me kind of show you just how awesome I am. It's just kind of an interesting like difference between both siblings, and it's something that Marcos ends up talking to Reed about. Like, if you don't give up, the fact of the matter is you might have this difference of opinion, but still talk to him, because it's a lot easier when you talk about these type of things. Marcos brings up the fact that he never really had much of a dad figure in his life, even before his dad kicked him out for being a mutant. It's like they never really had much of a relationship, and Reed's like, well, that doesn't change anything, because like it's like, how did you figure? Because Marcos was like, how do you figure out this whole dad thing? It's like he didn't. He's still figuring it out. But at the end of the day, it's like, no matter what your children do, you will always love them. That's a good parent. Like, And I think it gives Marcos hope when he sees the fact is that Caitlyn and Reed are here. They didn't just abandon their children. They're still by their children's side fighting for them. So that says a lot. And I think he was, but I could be wrong, but I think Andy was awake while Reed was saying that, so it's something that he kind of had to sink into Andy's head of like, hey, you are powerful. I get that, but it's like there are moments where it's like we have to like your powers aren't needed. We need to work together as a team. Because Andy was like, no, I can do this. I can do this. You know, like I said, he just hasn't need to prove himself. And there's an interesting a moment later on in the near the end of the episode where Reed's like, okay, you can tell me anything, whatever you need, tell me. But it seems like he doesn't tell him. It's just like I think he's afraid to tell him because it's actually something I brought up in the past too. How I feel like both siblings kind of represent different spectrums of the X-Men universe. Where it's like I feel like Lauren represents like more of the X-Men style and maybe Eddie would fit more Brotherhood. Like that's just shallow observations, but I just thought like the way Andy was all about like using his powers and Lauren kind of concealing hers a little bit more, being concerned about a little more about the people around her, which isn't to say Andy isn't caring, but it's just a difference. It's almost like, and to me, it's very different. It's like very representative of like the differences between Xavier and, you know, Magneto about like how that whole mutant situation should be handled. It's actually kind of interesting because I'm an idiot. It never correlated in my head that John was the one in charge. I kept thinking like Marcos was in charge, even though it's like, oh, Marcos got there 3 years afterward, like 3 years ago. Lorna was already there. It didn't click in my head because I was like, because to me, I felt like Marcos was the one giving out the orders, but it's like, no, John's been running this operation from the beginning. He even talks about the fact that the X-Men gave him this job. I'm like, whoa, holy, like it's like the X-Men told him to kind of run this whole operation, the whole mutant underground. And they even told him about a war coming, which immediately my brain goes, is this referencing Days of Future Past? Is this like taking, like, even though that timeline got erased, is it taking place in that timeline? Once again, I've not seen, God, what was the last one? I don't remember. The most recent X-Men movie, and it's going to bother me, I don't remember. Because obviously that took place in the past, like parts of Days of Future Past. But there's also like, I'm just curious like where in the timeline it takes place. Once again, it's probably just gonna be super vague about it, but it's just kind of interesting because that made me go, oh yeah, like there's a war coming. I mean, that could have just been talking about that universe in general, but just because Days of Future Past is a thing and we saw what the future holds, it's kind of like, well, do you also see like where Logan takes place in that grand scheme of things? Which now, when you actually think about it, it's like, where does Logan take place in the timeline? Like, I would assume it's like, because I like most by then, it's like all the X-Men have been killed off anyway. So, I mean, you know, there's just so many different avenues and aspects that kind of go into in this whole situation. So, and since I'm talking about John, I got to talk about the whole John, Sonya, and Clarice thing because Clarice ended up bouncing in this episode. Which, to be fair, you can't blame her. It's like there's a part of me like you need to stick around. They need your help, but it's like for her, it's like all they've ever done is use her. It's like, oh, use me, manipulate me by messing with my memory. She already kind of chewed Sonya out last episode because it's like in love with someone who's never going to love me that way. Which it does seem like there might be something to that, like, because she asked John, like, was the way you looking at me before real? And he's like, it's complicated because there's the whole situation with Sonya, plus the fact of the matter is the reason why he kept things separate with Sonya is because it's like, no, and during this time, we can't really be like being so caught up in a relationship because it leaves us vulnerable and too distracted, which Sonya's kind of like, this is the perfect time that, you know, this might be our only time considering the way things are going. So, but the way like Sonya's kind of smiling at the end of the episode, you see John. So I think he's thinking about that, but I think there is a part of him that does actually have some feelings for Clarice, and he in general he just feels bad about everything they did to her. It's like we should have told her the truth, which Sonya's like she would have left. To be fair, who's to say what Clarice would have done? Like if you had told her the truth from the beginning, like. If he had used his bit, like, you know, and it's always, hindsight's always 2020. It's like at that time, if you had told Clarice the truth, what would she have done? Maybe she would have done what she did now. Maybe she would have stayed. I mean, that's in the past. Like, you can't undo what's been done, you know? So I just gotta live with the present. You gotta live with the consequences of what you do, so. I mean, that's a big part of this. Like, I mean, for one, she's on her own, which is never a good thing. She ended up bringing up the fact is that she does have people she needs to be searching for instead of helping them with their whole situation, even though helping their situation would help her situation. But for her, she was so upset about everything. Plus she has her own ambitions and she's like, I'm not just going to be your little portal to open and use whenever you want to. I'm a person too, you know, so. But I'm curious to see what they do with Clarice's story. Like, what else? Because I'm sure it ties in with the aspect of, like, when she was losing control of her portals in, wasn't that episode 2? Because she kept opening her portal to a specific, like, section of road, so it's like that place has significance for her. Maybe it's like the first time, like maybe she was in a car accident and that was the first time her power is activated or something, which kind of similar to Lauren's situation, but like maybe in her particular situation, not everyone survived. Maybe only she did, and that got her a lot of scrutiny for people. I don't know. I'm interested to see what they do with the whole Clarice situation, plus the whole John and Sonya situation. So it's also interesting too, because we ended up learning that John has a military past, not only just because of his dad, but his own time served, and it's like, after the whole July 15th thing, he's trying to raise money to help people. I mean, I'm sure it was mainly for mutants, but I'm sure it was also for helping anyone affected. But the guy was like, "Oh, you're wanting to help mutants? It's because of you people that it happened, and now you want us to help pay for you guys being taken care of." Bump that. So, you also had that moment of John saving the day too, because some douchebag radicalist was like, "Hey," and threw like a bomb or something, which he like disposed of quickly and like got everyone away and protected one lady when the explosion went off. So just showing you that at the end of the day, because even John was kind of like screaming at one dude, it's like, we fought to protect this country, we protected people, helped people, and you're just treating me like that, treating us like that, like we're monsters and anything like that. And I think that whole mentality is very much reflective of Jace's whole situation, Jace Turner. Because for him, he's coming into work, even though he's still dealing with everything. You even see it when he's at his computer. He sees that picture of his daughter, Gracie, and just like puts it down. Because like I said, that Sonya situation messed him up, because there's still that part of him, like, even though his wife explained it to him, I'm sure because of his memories and everything that she got a fiddle with, there's still a part of him that is like, he has to remind himself, no, she's going, she's been dead for 4 years. It's like, which is like super messed up, which seems like it aggravated him to the point of like, later on when they're like, okay, we're going to do this and do that, and one guy's like, oh, but what about warrants? He's like, I don't give a damn about warrants, showing you just how far Turner is willing to go for this whole situation, to make sure he gets reinstated immediately, because he was supposed to take time off because of what happened to him, being captured and, being tortured and everything because of Sonya, his brain being a little rattled. He ends up calling in Dr. Campbell for help, not for free, of course, because Campbell wants both Andy and Lauren. He wants as much information on them as possible, because it's something Lorna kind of gets at, and like I said, Reed discussed it himself, like just how powerful mutants they are. And like I said, when we seen prior, like at last week's episode, how not last week's episode, the week before last, of how good their powers work together, especially when they combine them, how powerful and how deadly it could be, like to focus what Andy's ripping power can do. So not even just that, like even on her own, like especially her power, like Lauren's power combined with other people is so badass, because of that whole truck situation in this episode. Like you have Lorna blocking, like stopping all the bullets, Lauren ramping the truck, and you had Wes like creating illusions. And I was like, oh yeah, that was sick, like creating, like, and make it seem like the trucks went in two separate directions. So I was like, oh, you're gonna follow one of them. So what if they follow the right one? It's like, what truck? And he's hiding the real truck. I was like, that's so beautifully executed. They're a little rough around the edges, but it shows you that when the time comes for it, they can, like, that they are, because before she was worried about them not taking this seriously, and once again the whole Caitlyn situation, but Caitlyn realized, okay, this is a situation where everyone needs your help. So I am curious about why Reed didn't want Marcos to like cover their tracks. I guess it's because, like, oh, this is an important room to somebody. I think the room might have been connected to someone he knew, because he looked at a picture and I didn't know what it was. I didn't catch it. If you did, let me know in the comments down below what it was. Is it because it was like someone in particular's room? Was it someone he knew that he had close tie with, that he was like, don't destroy the room, but it's like, we got to cover our tracks? Maybe it's because, like, oh, that computer might have important files and pictures of family or important, I don't know. I mean, like I said, overall, a great episode from just everything that went down this episode. Obviously, the most interesting thing that's going to carry over into the next episode is the fact is that Marcos gets a call for Carmen, and she's like calling in that debt. It's like, you come help me, or I rat you and your little underground out, which it's definitely going to be interesting to see what goes on in the next episode, especially now that Lorna's back in the picture, might be asking questions about where Marcos is at. So we'll see what goes down in the next episode. I'm so curious, not with just that, but everything else, Like I said, 'cause I still feel like there is more to what's on Andy's mind. And obviously Lauren and Wes kind of getting closer because it's like, because outside of her family, and that's kind of something I think once again going back to both siblings, is neither one's really talked to any of their parents about their whole situation. That's like, I'm sure Lauren's kind of skated on ice around it because it's like subsequently since revealing herself to her parents, it's like she's never really talked about the whole mutant situation. Andy's never really talked about it. Now that the conversations come up, it's still a little weird and awkward because it's like dad kind of looks at me in a different light. So, you know, neither one of them is really communicate with anyone except for, you know, Lauren and Wes, because he's the one person she's opened up about everything, about the fact that I'm hiding for so long, you know, wanting to be normal, but then like, you know, the issues with having hidden for so long, that the fact of the matter is it's not like that's 100% right either. So it's just interesting to see like her bonding with someone. Especially when you think about all her relationships before, like, were based on lies. Because even the person she was kind of dating at the beginning of the series, it's like, well, even she had to lie to him. It's like, well, the situation with Wes, she can be open about, like, how she's feeling and everything. Stuff that she might not be willing to tell her mom or dad. Maybe some similar thing to Andy. It seems more like Andy might not be willing to talk to anyone, which, you know, just maybe just, like I said, his whole circumstances, depending on how far back this whole bullying situation, or feeling weird and awkward and alone or something like that. Like, I'm just curious to see how all those contributing factors, what they amount to going forward, especially with the whole Turner going in full force and Campbell being around about the whole Andy and Lauren situation. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.